Okay, wow. Great to see everyone here tonight.
That's right.
Yes,
Good evening.
welcome.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. So, welcome to the Hyde Park Town Board meeting. Today is Monday, November 8th. Please join me while we pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so a couple of housekeeping items first. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of October 15th and 22nd?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have a public hearing on the agenda tonight, but first I would like to encourage anyone who would like to comment on any of the resolutions to join us at the podium and just state your name and your address and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, looks like we'll just keep moving on that then. The public hearing on the agenda tonight is for the 2019 preliminary budget. So, Madam Clerk, could you please read the public hearing notice?
Please take notice that the Town Board of the Town of Hyde Park will conduct a public hearing on November 5th, 2018 at 7:05 p.m. at the Town Hall, Town of Hyde Park, 4383 Albany Post Road, Hyde Park, New York, on the preliminary budget of said town for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2019. A copy of said preliminary budget is available at the office of the Town Clerk of the Town of Hyde Park, Town Hall, 4383 Albany Post Road, Hyde Park, New York, during the hours of 8:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m., Monday through Friday, where it may be inspected by any interested person. The proposed salaries for the calendar year 2019 are as follows. Town Supervisor, $38,000. Councilperson, $8,000. Town Clerk, $53,000. Superintendent of Highways, $73,000. By order of the Town Board of the Town of Hyde Park, dated October 22nd, 2018, Hyde Park, New York, Donna McGrogan, Town Clerk.
Okay, so if anyone would like to make a comment on the 2019 tentative budget, please again come on up to the podium and state your name and provide us your feedback in 3 minutes.
Did you just want to give a little summary that the budget is under the tax cap
Sure.
again this year?
Thanks for that. Yes, yes. So again, yes, we have worked hard to once again produce a budget that's under the tax cap of 2%. And that has required us to be vigilant in our projections for expenses and revenue, and we have been conservative in those estimations, and we are very grateful to our department heads who've worked hard and worked alongside us to control expenses, because that really is the essence of controlling your budget. So you know, we have been able this year to add about, I think around $600,000 additional to the highway fund to pave additional roads. We were able to complete a lot of projects in town that we were used grant funding for, and so therefore we're able to spread that, eliminate the tax burden to the local people, but instead used grant monies that would have gone to other municipalities. So again, you know, this budget works hard to stay within the cap. There's not a lot of extra funds in there, as much as we would like to have been able to give some of the department heads the things that they requested, but you know, it is always this balancing act between providing excellent service and good quality service, and controlling the tax burden on residents. So again, I think we've accomplished that in this budget. So if anyone has comments, please feel free to make some. And I know that you guys have all kind of taken a hard look and seen what we've been able to do, and I think our town comptroller is here somewhere.
Yeah, he's in the audience there.
Where is he? He's hiding.
There
he is. TC, did you want to come on up and make any comments?
No, just briefly, it's a very tight budget.
Come on up to the mic,
yeah,
please.
Come on up to the mic. And
I'm trying to sneak out of here, you know. It's a very tight budget to stay within the tax cap, and we had to boost up some revenue estimates, so let's hope we meet those. But it's a workable budget. There'll be some final adjustments because, as you know, we just did a bond sale. We sold off some of the outstanding bands that were required to be sold. We got a pretty good rate of a little over 3%. Some of the other school districts and other municipalities that within the area had recent bond sales which were higher, so I was happy that we had a pretty good bond sale rate, 3%.
Is that a result of the Moody's?
And you saw the Moody's annual statement. I forwarded that to you. They commended the town for successful last 4-year finance growth, and also for your conservative, budget process. So.
Yeah, and that we were able to build up our reserves as is required, and so it was overall a very good report.
Yeah,
so.
you're maintaining a fund balance in excess of our policy, which requires about 10%. Our fund balance reserve is about almost 20%.
Yeah, and just from reading the report, they had really indicated that it's not excessive, though, and compared to towns throughout the state, we're on the low side for our fund balance, though it has grown significantly. So, well, we thank you for your hard work.
Okay, so what's going to happen now? The hearing basically stays open, and then we will give final recommendations to adopt the budget on the 19th.
On the 19th. Well, if
So
we don't have any comments, I'm planning.
You should close the hearing
I'm
tonight.
going to close the hearing tonight.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, TC. Safe
Okay,
ride home.
Thank you.
Thank you, TC.
Okay. All right. So are there any comments on the budget? Okay. So then may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I make a motion.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
And then can I ask the board if we can just change the agenda up a little bit? If we
Sure.
can move the workshop after the resolutions. We have an exciting night tonight where we're going to be, appointing a lieutenant, a sergeant, and a detective. So I'd like to be able to do that, so that way they can be recognized and celebrate with their families. And
Sure. Yes.
So if we can do that, that'd be fantastic.
Good idea.
So a motion to change the agenda and put the workshop at the end.
Please.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
So, yeah, welcome. Great to see everyone here. And why don't we just go on ahead with the resolutions then?
All right. Resolution 1151 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town board to appoint Sergeant Paul CACCIA as a contingent permanent full-time lieutenant with the Town of Hyde Park Police Department.
Second?
And all in favor?
Maybe before we
Aye.
vote, can we have Chief just come up for a second and just
Sure.
give a little talk about Paul before we
Okay,
we
sure.
vote on
Yeah,
it, if
yeah,
that'd be okay?
Yep, sure.
Hey, Chief.
Hi,
Good
Chief.
evening. Thank you for putting the commitment forward to the Hyde Park Police Department and making these promotions and make us whole again. We haven't had a full-time chief and full-time lieutenant on a consistent basis since 2009. So that's 9 years ago since we had our administrative staff to where it needs to be. And I just want to say, if it wasn't for you guys and all the hard work you've done, we wouldn't be able to be whole again. And I really appreciate that. And so do the members of the police department. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Chief.
it's
So we're
our
going to
honor.
promote Paul CACCIA tonight to lieutenant. Paul and I spent 10 years together in the school. We worked side by side in the school. He's been here in Hyde Park for 18 years now, Paul? 18 years. So that says a lot for someone to come to this town and spend 18 years with us and never have any problems within the community, never have any problems in the police department, always do whatever's asked of him. And that's why I recommended Paul CACCIA to be promoted to lieutenant tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you so much. All right, well, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Svensson.
Aye.
Councilman Ray.
Aye.
Councilman Marine.
Aye.
Councilman Schneider.
Aye.
Supervisor Rohr.
Aye. Okay,
You want to do the
yeah, sure,
badge?
we'll do it on an individual basis. Sure.
Paul, come on up.
Do you want to do the oath at this point as well?
Ken, can.
Come on down and
Are you gonna take a
we'll
picture?
your oath of office right now. Because we know how busy you're gonna be tomorrow, you won't be able to get over here. Sorry, glasses on. Well, you've actually been.
No, no.
No, I mean, but
I don't know.
we do business tomorrow?
It's open on election day.
Yeah.
Ready? I, Paul CACCIA,
I, Paul CACCIA,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United
that
States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of permanent full-time police lieutenant
as permanent full-time police lieutenant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my
You are
ability.
so sworn.
All right. Nice. Cool. Who I got?
Donnie, you might want to just,
Just stay here.
Jason Ruscillo. Okay, read it. I do. Okay.
David, yep, be a
All right.
resolution number 2.
Resolution 11-5-2 of 2018. Resolution authorizing the town board to appoint Detective Jason Ruscillo as a contingent permanent full-time sergeant with the Town of Hyde Park Police Department.
Again, Chief?
Second?
Yeah. Would you
So,
like to talk about?
again, when we came to promoting Paul, then we said, okay, now we have to fill a sergeant position. So we interviewed 3 very highly qualified, trained officers for that position. And Ken will tell you, it was so nice to sit down in these interviews and let each person that interviewed come up and basically tell their story of why they feel they should be in that position. And it feels so good that we had 3 really, really good candidates. And it was a really tough decision for us to sit down and figure out who was going to be the next sergeant of the police department. And I'm honored, after 12 years of service here in the town of Hyde Park, to recommend Jason Ruscillo as our next sergeant.
I agree.
Very nice.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you want to do the roll call? Can you do the roll call?
Yeah, we didn't
sorry.
second
That's
that.
okay.
Emily seconded.
Okay.
Emily
Yeah,
seconded,
yeah.
Okay.
So-
And it's Emily Svensson. I'm sorry. Changed my seat and I got confused.
Yeah.
Councilman Svensson.
Me?
Yeah.
Councilman Ray.
Aye.
Councilman Marine.
Aye.
Councilman Schneider.
Well, I'm a little bit torn because, you know, I was told if he becomes sergeant, he can't do the spin class. But I did talk to the chief, and we can change your time a little bit, so
Danny, I'll come in early for him, don't worry about
then aye.
And Supervisor Rohr.
Aye. So, yeah, we're so happy.
I, Jason Ruscillo,
I, Jason Ruscillo,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
as full-time police sergeant
as full-time police sergeant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
You are so sworn.
Thank you.
Good.
Hold on. Wait, can I take it? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
One more, Don.
13, 14. Yeah.
Getting our exercise tonight.
Number three, Joe.
Resolution 11-5-3 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town board to appoint police officer Martin Monaco III as a temporary police detective with the Town of Hyde Park Police Department.
Second.
So, Chief, again, talk about Officer Monaco.
So I feel like a proud parent up here, and I'm like talking about each one of my kids, because as we talk about, we're a family here. We really, truly are a family at 3 Cardinal Road. And in the line of work that we do, you have to know that the person you're working with and alongside has your back and you have theirs. We have to kind of think for one another. This one I'm really proud about because, well, not because it makes me feel old, but it does make me feel old. That Martin Monaco was one of my DARE students back when I taught DARE. And it's kind of interesting now that I'm having kids that I taught DARE to, not only being police officers, but being police officers of rank. So it's really warming for me and exciting for me to be able to see these, as I call them still, kids, work their way from elementary school to middle school to high school to college, working alongside of me, and now they're becoming members of rank of our police department. And I think it shows a lot about this town and this police department. And I want to bring up Martin Monaco as our new police detective.
Great, so we'll vote on it.
Okay, well, we're going to need...
Councilwoman Svensson.
Aye.
Councilman Ray.
Aye.
Councilman Marine.
Aye.
Councilman Schneider.
Aye.
Supervisor Rohr.
Aye.
Congratulations.
I, Martin Monaco III,
I, Martin Monaco III,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of police detective
of police detective
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
You are so sworn.
He can wear a suit to work now. He can wear a suit to work now.
Oh, is that what it is?
He's a lieutenant. I'm a detective.
There we go.
He's a detective.
One more.
Hold on, you got to...
Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good job. One more.
One more.
Donna, we have one more, okay?
Yep,
One more. Yeah.
Okay. Resolution 11-5-4 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town board to appoint part-time police officer Tiffany McLaughlin to the Town of Hyde Park Police Department.
Second.
And Donna, would you like to do the roll call?
Councilwoman Svensson.
Aye.
Councilman Ray.
Aye.
Councilman Marine.
Aye.
Councilman Schneider.
Aye.
Supervisor Rohr.
Aye.
So this is kind of ironic. People probably watching at home are like, wow, this police department is huge. We have, all these people getting promoted, we're hiring new officers. But, again, this is the commitment that we were given by this town board to try to make our department as strong as we can for this community. And we saved the best for last, and we are hiring Tiffany tonight. And we want to just say, Tiffany, welcome to our family.
I, Tiffany McLaughlin,
I, Tiffany McLaughlin,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of part-time police officer
of part-time police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my
You
ability.
were so sworn.
Not this day and age.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Kind of see it. Clean out.
I know, yeah. Donna, should we just finish up the
Yeah, yeah, for
resolutions
sure.
and then-
Yes, yes, yes.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I know. Well, you know,
Should we keep going?
Yeah,
All right.
let's just, yeah, we might as well.
I heard.
All right,
Close the door
resolution,
and then get out first and to the meeting.
you guys ready to keep going?
I
Yes.
think so,
All right.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
let's.
Number 5 to you.
Resolution 1155 of 2018, resolution acknowledging the resignation of Town of Hyde Park Police Officer Thomas Mirabella.
a second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1156, 2018, resolution authorizing the Town of Hyde Park Recreation Director Kathleen Davis to attend the 24th Annual Downstate Conference 24/7 We Are Recreation.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Do we have a second on that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that Dave or?
That was
I think it was me.
Emily.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Emily.
yeah, yeah. It's a little hard to hear.
Okay.
Resolution 11-5-7 of 2018, resolution reappointing Robert Babcock to the Town of Hyde Park Recreation Commission.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And thanks to Bob for volunteering
Yeah,
again.
he's done a great job.
Yeah, that's great.
Resolution 11-5-8 of 2018, resolution setting public hearing on special district benefit assessment rules.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1159 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town supervisor to submit statement of unpaid charges to the Dutchess County Real Property Tax for inclusion on the 2019 tax bills in accordance with the provisions of town law.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And for number 10, we have to amend, I have to ask for resolution to amend it at the dais. Actually, we're just replacing the one that was created last Friday with this one that you have before you. There were a couple of errors in it, so it just seemed easier to replace it.
I'll make a motion to amend.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 11-5-10.
Oh, yes. Well, we
Another, that was just to make the amendment.
right,
and you
right.
need to-
Now we need,
Am I
yes.
out of order?
No, you're good, you're good.
Okay, resolution waiving all site plan fees for the replacement of Pine Brook wastewater treatment facility at the Pine Brook Estates development.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 11-5-11 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town supervisor to execute the 2019 procurement specialist shared service agreement with Dutchess County.
Second.
And just to clarify, this does not commit us to using the services of Dutchess County, it just allows us to do that. And it could actually be helpful in preparation of RFPs and those type of things. So it allows us to piggyback off some of their bids. So That's the purpose of this. So did we vote on that? I don't
No,
think so.
I just seconded it.
And so all in favor?
Aye. Resolution 11-5-12 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town supervisor to execute the worksite employer agreement form with New York Life Insurance to allow Town of Hyde Park employees to participate in the New York Life Insurance Premium Payroll Deduction Program.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 11-513 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town supervisor to execute the CSEA Employee Benefit Fund contracts for the Town of Hyde Park Highway Unit and Town Hall Unit for the period of January 1st to January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 11-514 of 2018, resolution commencing the local law adoption process for local law I of the year 2018 entitled A Local Law Amending Chapter 100-23 of Hyde Park's Town Code with regard to solar pilot agreements.
Second.
And Warren, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just briefly, our original solar law had a cap on what we would set the pilot program, which is a payment in lieu of taxes for solar farm facilities at 75% of the amount that would otherwise be payable. And we found after working through a couple of these that it was easier to just provide for more discretion in the town board to approve these without the 75% limitation. We thought it was going to be very difficult to negotiate the settlements. It hasn't been that difficult. So this gives us a little bit more flexibility in negotiating these pilot programs.
Are we using the NYSERDA formula?
No, we're not using it.
No.
Okay.
Jennifer did not want it.
The tax assessor recommended we don't.
Okay.
You can utilize that in the negotiation process, but it's not, we're not utilizing their program.
Yeah, and I think we now have our 7th application. So we're like,
Okay.
the solar.
I just want to make sure we're getting our fair share out of these.
We're getting more than our fair.
Yeah, it's more than what was allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing
More
fine.
than what was allowed. Okay.
Yeah.
It eliminates the 75% limit, so we can,
Well, the 75% wasn't a limit, it was a minimum.
no, it's 75%. We fixed it at 75% in the
Yeah.
original law.
Right.
Now we're eliminating that, so we're negotiating the pilot payment. So it can be more than 75%.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 11-5-15 of 2018, resolution approving budget revisions to the Town of Hyde Park for the period of October 2018, budget revisions number 2018-10.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye. And resolution 11-5-16 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town clerk to solicit bids for the 2019 Town of Hyde Park Highway contractual services.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, was there another one?
One more.
One more.
Oh, I missed it somehow.
Number 17.
Sorry. Must have stuck together. Resolution 11-5-17 of 2018, resolution authorizing the town clerk to solicit bids for the 2019 Town of Hyde Park highway materials.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so let's quickly move on to our workshop, and we have our planning board chair here, Michael Dupree. So thanks for joining us tonight, Michael. And at Emily's suggestion, which I'm glad you thought of that, I had Caroline prepare the zoning map and the use table. So there's a copy there for you. And so do you want to kind of lead us into this discussion, Michael?
I do. First, I want to say thank you to Councilman Schneider for requesting a change in the agenda. When I came in and saw the happy people ready to celebrate the promotions, I thought, I don't want to talk about boring land use for 10 minutes and postpone that.
No, it's so nice to have people enjoying the moment.
Yes, and it really is a family out there.
Yeah.
Also, just to clarify before I get into this topic, for Councilwoman Svensson, Councilperson Svensson, so the NYSERDA guidelines suggest so much. And when our first solar farm that we passed, when they came to negotiate the pilot, they were actually more generous than giving what NYSERDA would have given in the formula. Part of that was because the county didn't take advantage of what they could have, so they lumped what could have gone to the county and gave it to us instead. So I could have spoken in favor of it, but I hardly approve because.
It sounds good. I was just surprised because I was not in the loop on that, so that's great.
You're negotiating these on a case-by-case basis, and as the supervisor said, we do now have 7 applications before us, and it won't surprise me if I get an 8th or 9th. As I said on the days of the planning board, it's interesting that when you pass a law, suddenly they all want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that all the communities are embracing them as we are.
They're not.
I was going to say, other towns have seen solar farms already approved, 2 of them, but in both cases, they had to go through a more cumbersome process because they went through the public utility uses that are allowed even in our code. But then it requires regular site plan, and it took them both much longer than it took to get through us, and that was our maiden voyage, so to speak. The next one that we're approving, I can't tell you whether we're going to approve it or not. The next one that we're entertaining an approval on, I think will sail through a lot more quickly because we now went through the process with someone else, the guinea pig, so to speak. So I think that each of these now will go through more quickly.
Well, and I think that, when we originally discussed it, we thought, well, we don't really want to have to negotiate with each developer on it, but as it turns out, there seem to be very specific factors that influence their profit. I learned a new word, tranching. Did anybody? So that actually has a influence on how much they, on which part of the NYSERDA plan they are able to come in under. So it has a strong influence on their profit. So I think that's why it's good for us to have that flexibility when we do talk with them.
I would add that that's one of the reasons why we made the recommendation on the first application, and will likely do so throughout, that they don't require performance bond. Instead, they do an agreement with you, a memorandum of understanding or something, because we don't want to increase the cost of the electricity itself or the power that's being generated.
Well, now you're kind of bringing something back to the forefront. I do think that we need to kind of work through that process of how the application gets referred to us at what point, and I think we've tried to kind of put that down on paper because we want to make sure that any of the applicants are immediately notified that there is a pilot program in place. And what do you think about when should it get kicked to the town board for
I believe
the
Attorney Raplansky's guidance is that as soon as we have a discussion, whether that's offline or an actual application, it'd be referred over to the assessor.
The initial one, but for the decommissioning plan, because that's something the town board has to approve?
The town board approves it, but in each case, we want to get a recommendation from the planning board. There might be some cases where a bond would be more appropriate.
Correct.
I think, but in most cases, we'll probably go with a decommissioning agreement.
As you know, the zoning administrator is required to determine that there's an administratively complete application before us. Because the first one was new, we didn't have the decommissioning plan proposed yet, nor the pilot. But I've spoken with Tad, and what we'd like to go through from now on is before it gets to our desk, that there actually be that included inside there. That way, we can go ahead and make it more parallel, that you guys will get to review the decommissioning plan once we can make a fairly quick recommendation as we go through the rest of the site plan. It's interesting to note that in terms of environmental impacts, thus far, every solar application that I've seen, that these include the new ones, are all going through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This has to do with something with the financing they're getting through NYSERDA. So normally, when we're looking at environmental impacts, we would go through the Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC. Their environmental mapper, which is you put your grid number, and the state has actually made this much more efficient. Once you put in your grid number, then it'll automatically, if there's a known sighting of an endangered, threatened, or rare species, if there's a floodplain, if there's anything, it shows up and it actually checks the boxes for you already on the environmental assessment form. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is, I guess I would say it's more low-tech. Their version of the environmental mapper shows the whole county. It's not parcel specific. So if you look at our county, pretty much everything outside the cities is going to show potential for an endangered, threatened, or rare species. It's going to show potential of this, that. So what happened with the first application we approved that's been forwarded to you guys for the decommissioning report was that because it's countywide, it showed, well, yeah, there's Indiana bat and northern long-eared bat because they're basically all across the county. There wasn't any specific habitat there for it because it had already been removed. The trees had been removed in anticipation of there being a farming operation. But they still had to go through the process, and it took a little bit longer than it went through the DEC, is what I'm going to tell you. So
Do they
that's
get FERC permits? Is that why they have to, is it?
yes.
So it's federal?
It's federal. and
Federally regulated?
I didn't realize
Yeah,
this.
that
So,
makes sense.
because we now know, we had made a neg deck. We stood by the neg deck, but we had to do a little bit of extra work in terms of cost to the applicant, as well as hire a new consultant to review their work, because U.S. Fish and Wildlife doesn't respond very quickly. So they said, well, we'll pay your consultant to see if he agrees with our report. And that happened, I think it was 3 months that we concluded before the U.S. Fish and Wildlife finally signed off. We didn't need it, but the company does in order to proceed with its financing. So we've worked that little mechanism out too to make sure we get the process moving quickly. So anyway, what I'm here for tonight.
Yes, let's talk about
Normally
this.
what the planning board does is, administer the code, but from time to time, we also make recommendations to adjust zoning. Some of that's come about, say, for the Crossroads Core, but also because I've been, thanks to you guys and prior boards, chair for so long now, I'm able to speak to a lot of realtors as part of the development community to find out, what's out there in the market, what's going on. And for years, particularly after the Great Recession, there's some parcels that are on 9G and even on 9 that have been empty since, I think, some as long as I've lived here, which is 25 years. And when we first adopted the zoning, even though some of those parcels were then put in districts that were residential, our residential zones do allow certain commercial applications, roadside stands, things like that. And I believe the hope was that as these properties lowered in value, that someone would come along and maybe use, take advantage of some of the uses that they could that would be semi-commercial, I'll call them, or commercial but not heavy commercial. That hasn't really happened in many cases. And what I was speaking to the supervisor about, I didn't prepare a map per se, but I spoke with Supervisor Rohr in her office, as well as a little bit with one of the council members. So you have, this is the area by the entrance to GREENTREE. This is the plot that's next door to the one that the town took over. And after the DEC did its environmental remediation, it's now a passive recreation open space. So there's been, I believe it was Sonny's Deli years ago.
Yeah.
It's been sitting there empty since I can remember. And because the economy is doing better and Hyde Park seems to have a lot of happening things on it right now, which I'm excited is happening, some realtors contacted me and said there's been interest in the building that used to be Sonny's Deli. The way the zoning is now, it's now Greenbelt, so it's primarily residential.
It's neighborhood.
I'm sorry, neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't think it's primarily residential. I don't think anybody's going to buy that property and say, I want to set a house on Route 9G. Your traffic speeds go up in this area. They're pretty high. Now, when the zoning was first adopted, as I understand it, we were trying to not let commercial areas just snake up and down Route 9 and 9G.
Right.
So if there were some areas that were commercial, if they were kind of isolated, you may have made them neighborhood or greenbelt. In this instance, this one parcel where Sonny's Deli is would not allow most of the commercial uses that people are interested in. In addition, there are 2 or 3, adjacent parcels before you get to neighborhood core. That's the pink on here. One of those has Heller Associates
Yeah, it's a
and
little
Didi
plaza.
Patel. It's a little tiny plaza.
Dental,
If that ever quit having tenants, and it didn't last, if nothing was in there for a year, it also would revert to the underlying zoning, meaning neighborhood, and you wouldn't have any way to make that commercial. So my proposal is that if you could take the neighborhood core and extend it down, at least to the corner, the entry to GREENTREE, and you may want to consider doing the opposite side of the entry, because that's also where they have headstones for sale. That use also wouldn't be allowed if it ever stopped. Now, this is up to the board to determine whether you maybe want that to not happen, but to me, the only way that you would ever make those be desirable for residential would be if the values went so low that it wouldn't be good for our tax rolls. At the same time, when you have a neighborhood as dense as GREENTREE is, it's nice to have the idea of small-scale commercial, a walk-in shop, a deli, again, something where the neighbor could walk into and walk back, and you wouldn't be able to do that with most of the neighborhood, the limited commercial that neighborhood offers. Neighborhood core, on the other hand, does offer general commercial. It does, though, limit the scale to 6,500 maximum. That means that the building plus any associated parking stalls, 9 by 18 each, count as scale. So you're not going to have some big, giant commercial space. What you would have instead would be some limited commercial, like what exists now with Heller, I think the pizza place, and the dental. You'd have things like that that could serve a neighborhood where they could walk to without having to, get out and use their vehicles. So that was the purpose of the discussion, or why the request was that I think that, I was appointed the year that the zoning kicked in, and like I said, our first thought was, well, let's see what happens here. Maybe someone will do something that's in the limited uses that are allowed. That just hasn't occurred, and I don't think we want to, tonight we heard from the comptroller that our finances are getting better, thanks a lot to your fiscal prudence, but also because there is more activity, we have had an expansion of the tax base in some ways than the improvements we're seeing. And I think that this would actually help stabilize that so that we don't have further loss.
I just wanted to point out, and I couldn't agree with you more, and I think we've talked about this a number of times over the years, so I'm glad that you're bringing it forward. But I think it bears noting that in addition to the zoning, probably the biggest impediment to redevelopment right around there is that it's in the floodplain of the Crum Elbow Creek. So Sonny's Deli, the lot that the town restored, and also the Headstone lot, I think are all considered part of the floodplain of the Crum Elbow Creek. And I live back there, so I can say there has been flooding through there. Now, it still might be possible to use those and build in a way that is compatible with flooding, but I just want to point that out, that it's not, it's not just simply like if we change the zoning, then it's going to be simple for them to be redeveloped.
Oh, no, I'm not, believe me, I'm not implying that.
But I'm certainly open to that possibility.
Yeah, the issue would be, since it's in a 100-year floodplain technically, but those floods seem to happen yearly these days.
But it takes some of the stumbling block away by us doing that, and I think that's...
And it places the owners are aware, potential owners I think would be aware, because as any part of due diligence, you're going to find out pretty easily. If you could put it in the environmental mapper from the DEC, and it'll show you where the floodplain is. That noted, as our zoning administrator, Tad Moss, has pointed out, where Sonny's Deli is the building, it's somewhat debatable as to whether or not it's actually in the zone, because the zones are done kind of macro. And that really comes into play in terms of if you're going to get a mortgage. If you're going to get a mortgage, you're going to have the additional flood insurance. And again, that's at your own risk. But there are also ways, I don't think anybody's going to use the building Sonny's that's been sitting there empty as is. And now with building construction techniques, I know I've taken some courses in that as part of our land use training. There are ways to build so that you can mitigate potential impacts from the floodplain. There are a variety of ways to do that, and that would be required in this area. So again, it doesn't remove all hurdles, it just removes one, and to me it's the biggest, because right now if someone wants to do something even semi-commercial, there's just not a lot of uses there. And while I would love to see all those properties suddenly become green space and nothing there, and be an entrance out to the rural areas, the fact is that the owners, they believe that there's a certain worth to it. And in reading case law, so the planning board never creates a lot during the subdivision unless we know that a use can be on it. And there are times when someone will say, well, but I could put a lemonade stand. Well, yeah, but the truth of it is if you read case law, there's something there's a sort of standard about a reasonable expectation of return on the money you invest. So if you're going to spend, say, $100,000, $150,000 on a lot that has a building on it, you're not going to say, well, I'll tear that down and then put a lemonade stand, because you're not going to get any kind of rate of return. And the only way that you would then buy it is if you say, well, I'll buy it for a nickel. And then that somehow becomes the value, and it lowers our tax value. So if there's a way to make it commercial, and again, I'm attracted to this because neighborhood core, as you can see, the big pink area, if you just take those next parcels that are in orange neighborhood, it would extend that same zone. So it's not what I would consider spot rezoning. It just says, let's make that a bit bigger. And in a way, it allows, again, existing uses to no longer be worried that they would have to be, that they're grandfathered, so to speak. And I think it incentivizes potential for some development there. There's the Sonny's Deli parcel, the realtor who has it, Tom LeGrand, has told me that he's had now about 11 inquiries. I've met with one of them, along with the supervisor, and then there's another gentleman who's been phoning me that I've tried to be back and forth. This is a little bit of a busy time, as you all know, before me, but I've been back and forth with him as well. And I think there's a real potential for that, in other words, to come back on to being a real contributor to the tax rolls. And it doesn't make sense to just take that one isolated parcel. If you look at it,
I agree.
like I said, the neighboring parcel that has the plaza. In addition, neighborhood core does allow residential uses. They're allowed in all districts. So it doesn't take away the possibility of it being residential. It just says that that's not the only use that primarily we allow.
Michael, did you consider neighborhood business district? Because, you know, there are a number of small neighborhood business districts, like the one at the end of South Cross, or, you know, you could do a small neighborhood business district. The only reason I bring it up is that it seems like it's sort of the purpose that neighborhood business district is created for, you know, to kind of serve a neighborhood, where that neighborhood core always seemed to me like it was overly large and might want to be scaled back at some point, so.
The neighborhood core looks huge.
Yeah.
And I did consider neighborhood business district. That's really, I don't really have a preference.
Okay.
What I would say it to you is that it's a bit ironic. If you look at the rest of the NBD districts up and down 9G,
Yeah,
you'll notice that there's one that's just north, that there's no neighborhood by it.
right, I
Yeah,
know. Well,
It was put
pretty
there
much just because there
it was commercial already.
there, yeah.
If you read the purpose of an NBD, it's really to satisfy an existing neighborhood by it. And this is a classic example that would call for a neighborhood business district.
Yeah.
You have one large one, i.e. GREENTREE, and then you have one across the street. So it's, to me, it's not that it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I was looking at the parcel sizes. The NBD allows 7,500 square feet for scale. Neighborhood core is only 6,000.
Oh, okay.
Those parcels are so small, I don't think you could actually
It
get to
wouldn't matter.
7,500.
Yeah.
So to me, it really didn't matter, and it more or less forced the issue to say, well, it's going to have to stay small. The only way you could get it, as an NBD, the only way you could get up is if you bought a couple of parcels and combined them. And I'm probably going to speak out of turn here, but I don't know what the town's long-term plans are, but I would also add that if you were to rezone the parcel that was just taken over, really to sort of get rid of an eyesore, if the town wanted, if someone said, well, I want to buy that lot too and combine them, if the town were interested, you could, well, not sell it, I guess would be the right term, de-accession it, whatever, and have that go back on the tax rolls as well, because right now, with it being neighborhood and owned by the town, it's so limited. But again, neighborhood core, general commercial is allowed, just as it's allowed in neighborhood business district.
Well, it's almost just as, but in general, commercial in neighborhood core is by special permit,
You have to have special, that's because I think that we want to control it more than what you would
Okay.
in NBD.
and it's just site plan in
Yep.
NBD, but
Yep,
you
yep.
could still get through.
And there was a
either
special
one.
use permit,
Yeah.
and, you know, the criteria for special use permits are basically, does it produce a negative impact
Yeah.
to the character of the surrounding community, the surrounding neighborhood, et cetera? And to me, it seemed appropriate that they would have to go through that criteria, because you are close to a neighborhood.
Makes sense.
So,
Thanks.
yeah, thanks, Michael. So it sounds like either would work. It's just a matter of
I defer to the
scale.
attorneys.
Well,
No.
right?
I'll have to take a look at it.
Yeah.
So it's always easier to just extend a district into,
That's
Than
sort
to
of my
create a
view as
new-
well.
right,
It's,
yeah.
it seems less complicated because you have a partner, a district to sort of can absorb all the other properties into, rather than creating a new neighborhood district.
Well, it just seemed, at some point, you know, when the bigger zoning is reexamined, it always seemed to me that neighborhood core was
It's huge.
drawn too
It's huge.
generously.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's our biggest one.
And a lot of
Yeah.
that property is not what you'd want to see developed densely necessarily. You know, the lands near Hackett Hill, for instance.
Right.
No, and we've never really taken a comprehensive view of the entire zoning. It's been more, when we see errors arise
Yeah,
or
sure.
issues, we've taken a look at that. I mean, you can't even see it on your map because it's too small, but there's an actual neighborhood business district that has no neighborhood around it, and it's just a single parcel. That was zoned that way. I mean, it's the deli that's at the end of Quaker Lane. I mean, they wanted it to stay commercial because it's actually a very utilized deli, but
Sure.
there's literally no
Oh, I see
neighborhood
it
around
there.
it. There's nothing. You can find it, it's just hard to
Oh,
see.
yeah, yeah, I
I
see
mean,
it.
that's sort of a bad
You've
designation.
got a neighborhood up behind there. There's a neighborhood.
It's, the neighborhood itself, Green Fields, is really.
No, not Greenfield.
Oh, I mean,
Just the little street.
Cookingham
There's a
and that
couple
area?
streets back
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it's not a neighborhood per se. It's okay.
It's a neighborhood deli.
It's a neighborhood deli.
It's a neighborhood deli.
No, I have no objections to remaining commercial. I just
Yeah.
thought that could have been a neighborhood core as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think I'm in I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think so, too.
I really.
Thanks.
Otherwise, it's likely that nothing will
Right.
ever go into that
Well,
property.
like you
mean-
say, we don't, the point of the whole zoning system here is to not let commercial just expand all along the
Right.
corridors. But, you know, then there are certain places where when it all has
Where it
already
makes
been
sense.
commercial,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and it is attached to a pretty dense neighborhood,
Right.
so to speak, so.
It's just down the way from the East Park Business District as well. That has a much higher scale, though, and I don't think you want to extend that all the way.
No.
No.
I don't think the residences would want that to be,
Well,
residents.
it's not as logical anyway, and it would be, as Warren said, a lot more, it's more difficult if it's creating it, if it's not connected,
Mhm.
so.
Emily, were you there when Sonny's Deli was in existence?
No.
It was a
I
business.
I
it was a
lived
great
there
deli.
Yeah, I
when
was-
Sonny
Okay.
was
I went to
there.
it.
It was a
and
great deli.
We used to walk there all the time.
Yeah, people loved
See?
having that
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
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 It was
Again.
busy little places. Yeah.
He actually had both delis. He had the one on the corner of Quaker and Salt
Exact,
Point.
yeah, right.
That was his
Oh.
original, and
Is
then he
Quaker
opened up
still there? I don't know.
Sonny's 2, which was on,
Who
next to
knows?
your place, and now he has one out in,
And that's really the issue. It can't become a deli again unless we
Yeah.
do this rezoning.
Right.
so we gotta
Or,
change
or
that.
another use.
Another use,
And,
but I just-
mean, a likelihood of
use.
it becoming a deli.
Yeah,
is
that's not like.
probably-
No, it's
But
just-
it's another
yeah.
use. We've had a couple of different inquiries, someone who wanted to use it to, for ATV,
Yeah,
you
he
know, like
called
an
me.
ATV.
It's mostly repair
Yeah.
and sales.
Yeah.
Sales, and that seemed to make sense, and someone who was interested in storing vehicles there. So I think that we would be open to that. But I do think it's important that, as Emily noted, you know, the zoning is just one piece of the issue there.
Yes.
It's the floodplain, and again, that has two issues, two sides to it, because if you just address the insurance component, that doesn't necessarily satisfy the requirements in the code for building in
Right.
floodplain.
It's definitely.
So
there's-
there
in
are
other words,
two
they've changed that.
parallel,
They've
but.
changed that. They've changed that.
Yeah, so it wouldn't solve every problem, but I
Just
think.
spoke
with-
on the rim at least.
I
yeah.
think, but I think with the right attitude and ability to work closely with the planning board and with TAD, that it could be achieved,
Mhm.
so.
I'd love to see that.
All right, so Warren, what's your thought on that?
Let me take a look at it, and maybe we can discuss that Wednesday.
Sure.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
And do you have would you have a list of the properties that would?
I can get you, there's.
If you
it's-
could do that, it would help me, because I'd want to pull the parcel access. for
Would
all.
you be interested in seeing the other side where the headstones are included in this side or not?
Well, give me the list
Think so.
of both
I will.
sides,
Okay.
and then I'll, if I.
Just
But
that
it's
one parcel.
Just that one parcel, and it would only be on the west side of
Mhm.
9G.
Yeah,
We
not
wouldn't
the
be
east
looking to
No, I don't think
expand it to the east side.
I don't think it makes sense on the other side, to be
No,
honest with you.
No, so it would purely be the west side, and those, I think,
Okay.
4 parcels, one
Four
of.
plus
Just
one.
get me the tax ID number.
I'll be happy to.
Okay,
Well, I
good.
guess it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parcels?
Is that how many? No, it's-
Or at 6, maybe?
6, sorry.
Hard
Six.
to tell
1,
from
2,
Yeah,
3,
it's so
4,
small.
5, and 6, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So I can have those emailed to you tomorrow?
Great.
That'd be great.
And then I just want to conclude, this is off topic a bit, but I'll be receiving the draft resolution to consider approval of the sake brewery
Oh, nice.
tomorrow. We worked through it with all the consultants so far, so.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll be considering approval this Wednesday.
That's
And
great.
it's very exciting to me, because
It
of
seems
course.
like it seems lightning fast,
Yeah,
like they
it's
just
fast.
came in.
Well, I mean, I should add, when you have the caliber of professionals that they have working for them, I mean, the architecture firm, Pelley Clark Pelley, that's Cesar Pelley, who did a lot of the buildings around the World Trade Center. I mean, this is world stuff. So they were able to accommodate all our requests very quickly. And I can tell you that the planning board, every member is just thrilled with the way the building's going to look. I mean, for all of us, we're already envisioning, what it's going to look like now, and I can't wait for it to start, but they still have to go through a few hurdles. I think I emailed all of you. Normally, they'd have to get a speedy or state pollution discharge elimination system permit from the DEC. But because this building already has a septic associated with it, both our building inspector, Don Westermeyer, and TAD have agreed that we can move that to condition of getting a CO. that means that that's about a 6-month hurdle, so that means that they're actually going to be able to pull the building permit far more quickly than what they otherwise would, so.
Oh, great. Is that for their sewage treatment plant?
Yeah, so the new wastewater treatment facility is for processed water instead of sanitary waste.
Okay.
So it's just the water that's used in the manufacture.
Okay.
So even though that's a much lower level threshold for the DEC to review and weigh in on, it's still just getting in their pipeline takes a certain amount of time. And they defer to Department of Health, our county Department of Health, which actually must do the review. And getting to their pipeline takes a certain amount of time. So I'm excited that we had some cooperation by administrative staff.
So are you saying that that condition will not need to be met
will
until
be-
until they receive a CO?
Prior to CO, they have to have a functioning wastewater treatment facility,
But not to obtain the building permit?
not to get a building permit. So they'll be able to start work.
Wow, that's huge.
This is big. This
That's
is very
huge.
big.
You know, it was pretty neat driving through town the other day. All there was like backhoe loaders and construction signs, and it was like, no matter what road you went on, there was like construction.
nice.
I was like, this is like, I never thought I'd be happy like going through construction.
Right.
But it was just like, I had a smile on my face. I was like, this is
You're going to keep seeing it for a
fantastic.
while because the back building next, the one that's closest to Pine Woods.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
That's.
Doing a beautiful job on that.
Thank you, I hadn't realized it, but they took me inside, and that building is far more along inside than what I thought.
Yes.
I suspect that they're going to have Verizon and Sideburns, the hair cutter, over there within 6 weeks, and then get started on the front building next.
Great.
Which, in our conversation the other day, they would like to have that ready by May 1st.
They would, because
They
the tenant.
feel very strong pressure to have that ready by May 1st.
The tenant where emergency one is now has a hard date. They need to, emergency one has to be out by May 1st for the new tenant to go in.
Does anyone know yet who the new tenant is?
It's
or
a
that's-
mystery.
Okay. I don't know.
For the rear building, you mean
Yes.
the current
Right, yeah,
E1
right.
building?
Yeah, the front building will be emergency one. Where emergency one is, I'm not permitted to say what it's supposed to be because loose lips sink ships.
But
Fair enough.
we met with, Michael and I met with the developers the other day to discuss our interconnection of our TAP project and their project, and they were very eager to work with us on making a success of
They're
both of
excited. They're
those. So,
jazzed
yeah.
for your phase two because
Yeah.
it's going to complement what they've been doing as well.
Yes.
So, and, you know, the little park garden area is
Yeah,
about to be
no, it
opened up
looks,
fully.
it looks
Looks
great,
great.
yeah. It's, and then, of course, we have our sidewalks going in on the north side of Pine Woods, so it's really
fantastic.
shaping up.
And the chain link fence is gone. The call stopped.
Are you getting a lot of calls?
Yeah, several.
people
Oh,
who-
because people want to cut through
They
there?
have the credit union.
If you want to go if you want to go south, it's much easier to leave the credit union and go back out
Right.
to the light,
Yeah.
or go back out even just to Pine Woods.
It was just
Oh, yeah.
nice having it down.
Well,
It looks
It
great.
looks so much
Thank you.
better.
Oh,
Yeah.
it definitely looks better.
Get a lot of people who give feedback on the former Amish market building, and clearly the property owners would love to rent that to a supermarket. I'm sure they would love nothing better, and I know that they're very heavily marketing it, but as of this time, I have not heard that they have anyone.
No, and I say this often out loud, so it's already in the record, but Department of Health, everyone needs to understand that there will have to be some changes for that building to be utilized. The septic systems there are sand filtration systems, which I repeatedly use this analogy, but that's like using an abacus to count instead of a calculator. It's a really old system, so they upgraded it, but in order to upgrade, they had to borrow all the sewer capacity for the old Amish Market building for the other buildings.
Right.
So the other 3 buildings are getting upgrades. They can have new tenants because there's been upgrades to the septic for those systems, but they were tied in, there were 2 systems and the Amish Market was tied into one. You can't utilize it unless there's a new area for septic, and we can solve
Or
that.
sewer.
They're going to.
Yeah.
Or sewer. That would solve the problem completely.
Yes, it would.
Right.
Well, we're looking forward to their support on it.
Yes.
It's a big undertaking,
Yes.
and we're having a meeting with the stakeholders on November 13th at 9 a.m., which will be televised, and that's the first step in the process. We are beginning the map plan, and it's actually not the first step in the process. I completely lie about that.
It's like the 200th step in the process.
Yeah, I wish it was the first step. But it's the first step in the many-step process of beginning the map plan and report. So,
form the district, right.
and which the end result of that is district formation. So, yeah, you know, they have the vision for a much denser, more intense use for that property, and that's predicated on sewer. And so we look forward to having their support as we move the project ahead.
Yeah, as a planner, when I walk around, I sometimes think, oh, that building could go there, that building could go there, where you just see vast amounts of parking that are underutilized.
Yeah,
It's because the
yeah.
septic's underneath that, and you can't put a building on top of septic systems. But you would have the ability to really do a lot of infill buildings, and see a real downtown area emerge. I'm preaching to the choir, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Michael.
Good. Well, thanks,
Thank you, guys, and
Michael.
thanks for working me in quickly, because I know I just
Sure.
made this
Yeah,
request
well,
last week.
We're glad to get it moving.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good night.
Good
And
night.
remember,
Thank
Michael,
you, Michael.
got to vote tomorrow.
Don't forget to vote tomorrow.
Good night, Michael. Thank you again.
Okay, so let's.
I make a
just-
motion to close?
Second?
Hold on 1 second. I mean, it is the first meeting of the month, so we do have the opportunity for public comment. If anyone has any comment on any matter of town business, they're welcome to join us at the podium. No pressure, sorry. You could just.
If you could just come up to the
would you
mic,
mind? And just state your name and.
I'm Reverend Sarah. I'm with Millennial King Family Church in Hyde Park. My son's a Boy Scout, and he's trying to get a badge. He needed to understand different topics and different points of views on the topics. So you were talking about solar farms a little bit. It was a little bit fast for us to pick up. I don't know if it's possible if you can explain it a little bit more
Well,
so you can
sure.
understand. I think we got a lot with the topic about, the zoning. That was quite interesting. There's a little back and forth between the floodplains with different ideas. But, he kind of needs some topics where there's differences of opinion, and that, I don't know if there is any on the solar farms, but it kind of went fast, so we couldn't pick it up too much.
Sure.
I would say that, in a lot of communities, there's concerns about the visual impacts of solar farms, that, that they would, that if you took an area, a large open space, and that was part of sort of a scenic view, and if you put solar panels all over it, that it would detract from people's view. And so I think that's been the concern that's been in some of the communities in the area. But when we wrote our code, we wrote it very carefully to make sure that solar facilities would be screened from view. So they'd be situated on the site in such a way that there wouldn't be a lot of visual impact, and that there'd be plenty of trees and vegetation screening them from view. So, that issue's been worked out, or can be worked out at the planning board level. When the projects come in, they have a public hearing at the planning board, and if the neighbors are concerned, they can work through it at that point. But so far, it hasn't been too much of an issue here.
But I think that's really our understanding, that in other communities that has been the objection, is concern about the visual appeal. Even though they theoretically support the use of alternative energies,
Exactly.
they might use an attitude of not in my backyard type of thing. And I think that is something that we have not really experienced here. And so, part of the idea that we looked at it when we decided to pass the law was that it could be a good use for people that have farmland or land in the rural parts of town, that it might be hard for them to continue to hold those properties, because of course they still have to pay taxes on them, and yet we don't, for municipalities, it's very expensive when new homes are built, because that's areas that we have to maintain. Our roads become very expensive. We have to plow them, we have to pave them, and so that was one of the attractions of passing a solar law, that first off, it laid out the process for making the applications and what the steps are that the developers would have to take. And also it would provide an incentive to use properties that really wouldn't be costly to the environment or to the town. So I think that you would find basically consensus on those issues, but again, I think as Emily pointed out, it's more of the people are concerned about that visual part. Yeah.
So just a personal question. When do you think these solar facilities will be able to come here? Like, when will they be ready?
Well, I think one is very close to being through the planning board process, and
Yeah, so that
so
maybe
really,
next year, or-
yeah,
yeah.
they'll probably.
And how can somebody sign up for like solar energy?
Well, do
They
we
all
still-
work through different systems as far as whether they're selling the energy to the grid or to individual customers. So do you guys know if any of these are ones that you can sign up to buy
be
from
like a
them
community
directly?
solar.
They usually, I think they do an outreach and they know the areas that they can include, and they'll probably notify property owners.
So like, does companies like Central Hudson and stuff provide services, the solar services?
So I think
They
that,
deliver.
well, Central Hudson, I think that they have to buy the energy from anyone that's producing it if they
Right.
put it into the grid.
Right.
And then they would sell it back to customers, as part of their, I mean, I don't know how you account for each electron, but as part
Is
of.
it usually cheaper than going with?
Well, Em, you have solar panels on your home.
Yeah, I
right?
do.
But-
And so then we get that electricity directly, but when these facilities go in and produce power, I'm not really sure how they're selling it, how people can buy it per se, or whether it just goes into the grid and gets amalgamated with all the other power.
Yeah, I think that that's the other option. I
Yeah.
think that basically the economics of it are that and I could be wrong, that the state is providing a lot of incentives for these solar companies to construct the facilities, and so they get some sort of additional, whether it's tax benefit or some sort of additional benefit to encourage them to build them via the state. I think a lot of it is income tax abatements.
So it usually goes into the grid.
Yeah.
It goes
And
into the grid.
sometimes other companies buy it.
And they get paid a certain amount, is basically the way it works. And that is somewhat dependent on the tranche they're in, which is where the NYSERDA, apparently the earlier projects received greater benefits, and then later ones receive less benefits from the state. And so it seems very complex as to how they actually make money on it, but.
But I mean, I think that anyone can choose, we all get our power, well, we don't all, but typically people get their power from Central Hudson, and everyone pays the delivery fee to Central Hudson, but you
Right.
can go into your account and change who you're actually buying your power from. So even though Central Hudson's still
Right.
delivering it, you can choose who the supplier is. And I haven't personally done that, but I think you can probably do it on their website,
sure
or
you probably
and there are different suppliers that may use primarily wind energy or solar, and so you can.
And
make
they
those
have
choices.
different prices for each one of those
I think
suppliers?
so, yeah.
Can
If
we,
you look on NYSERDA website, there's a lot of information about how it works.
I was just wondering, maybe,
But explain it
about
better
if he
than
has
we're
more
able to
questions, maybe we
explain.
can do
About
it
Central
offline.
Hudson and all that?
Yes,
and all
Let's
Steve,
end
yes.
this, because we
About
gotta tear
Central
down
Hudson,
this.
all the different
Right.
prices and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
check the NYSERDA website, there's lots of information about
Yeah.
solar farms and community solar and how that all works and ties into the grid.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Okay, so may I have then, Ken's right, we have to tear this down to get ready for voting
We're
here
voting
tomorrow.
tomorrow, so I'll make a motion to close, please.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye. Okay, that's right, Ken, I kind of got distracted.
That was our,
Thanks.
The chairs on?
Yeah, we got to put the chairs up.
Do you need help?
I can't.
Got it.
Back to
You
the
got it.